At a cruising speed of approximately 67,000 miles per hour, it takes planet Earth about 365 days to make one lap around the sun. This is my annual year in review. I'm Larry Fedorik, and this is Later That Same Life. On my weekly podcast, topics, discussions, and stories from our lives.
Season 11, Chapter 7.
Another trip around the sun.
2023.
2023, the year that was. Before beginning this podcast, I went back 1 year and listened to my year in review for 2022. In that podcast, the top stories were invasions and war around the world, how inflation was choking us, fires and floods killing us, and it was all under the stench of American politics. For a moment I thought, why don't I just rerun last year's year in review, just relabel it 2023? I didn't do that. However, it does seem that much of our modern history just keeps repeating itself. Do you realize we're coming up on the second anniversary of Russia's Ukraine invasion? 2024 will mark the third anniversary of the January 6th insurrection in Washington, D.C. This past November was the 60th anniversary of the assassination of JFK. Just those 3 anniversaries alone, well, that's a lot of cake. Champagne toasts all around. Ukraine under siege continued to be a big story in 2023, but then we began to hear this phrase, waning Western interest. Apparently, to paraphrase Jerry Seinfeld, we're not interested in what's on, we're interested in what else is on. And it's not just you and me that are suffering the fatigue of the daily news feed, it is politicians and power brokers wondering if continued Western support is ever going to result in a positive outcome. At first, this invasion gave NATO and the rest of the Western world the excuse they needed to suffocate that crazy little despot, no matter how rich he was. Putin and Russia would be all alone. Sanctions, embargoes, trade and banking penalties. That'll do it. Except we also learned the rule of international détente. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. There is this shady affiliation of crazies. Russia, Iran, North Korea, a few African nations, and occasionally China. Not exactly NATO, more like a loose organization of crazy oligarchs. Loco. Russia also hired this private paramilitary group of fighters known as the Wagner Group. And Ukraine is not the only country they fight in. In June of this year, their leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, led a rebellion against Putin, which didn't result in much more than a military parade and a show of force. Less than 3 months later, Yevgeny Prigozhin's airplane fell out of the sky, mysteriously, unexpectedly, and Prigozhin was killed. He's dead, we think. Probably. We're pretty sure. Dead. Likely. World attention shifted from the conflicts in Ukraine on October 7th, 10/7, Israel's 9/11. The terrorist group Hamas invaded Israel, killing at least 1,200 Israelis and taking several hundred hostage. Israel responded quickly with might and force. And at the time of this recording, the killing continues. Every EU and Western nation has said pretty much the same thing, that Israel has every right to defend itself. But enough is enough already. Let's work toward a two-state solution. As in, this is what's happening now, but what will happen after? A lot of Israelis and Palestinians want the two-state solution, and yet many others want the complete obliteration of the other. The Israelis have a questionable prime minister in Netanyahu, far-right politician facing corruption charges, planning to run afoul of the rule of law in his country, and questions dogging him as to how this was allowed to happen in the first place. Palestinians have no real leadership. Hamas is a terrorist group, and the Palestinian Authority is thought to be shaky, untrustworthy, and unprincipled. For Netanyahu, the war is a wag-the-dog scenario, but we see the political ramifications around the world. Palestinian Americans against Biden a year out from their election. Jews boycotting Trudeau because he called for a ceasefire. England, France, Germany, others. Presidents and prime ministers feeling the political ground rumble beneath their feet. Their own future and electability resting on a conflict that is thousands of miles away. While these powers hold meetings to save their jobs, people die. The Eastern world that is exploding, violence flaring and bullets loading. Those lyrics from the eve of destruction, 1965. Well, that was then, and that is now.
And even the Jordan River has bodies floating, but you tell me.
Just so you know, armed conflicts around the world by the numbers. Middle East and North Africa, 45 different armed conflicts. The rest of Africa, about 35. Asia, 21. Europe, 7. Latin America, 6. Some of these are armies and soldiers wearing camo and equipped by governments, but we have become just as used to seeing 6 raggedy guys with rifles in the back of a nondescript Toyota pickup. War is not new, but it is news. This is what has changed: world news and connectivity. So now it's easier, especially in the war in Gaza, for the diaspora and other countries to organize and take to the streets. We've seen a resurgence in the world's oldest prejudice, anti-Semitism. Even non-haters seem to have a problem distinguishing between the policies of an Israeli government and Jews worldwide, between Hamas and Palestinians, and people die. Our top story today, war. And I watch, and I wonder, if there was no war, what would news be covering? With 8 billion stories on planet Earth, hurtling through space at 67,000 miles an hour, surely there's something else to report on outside of war. There is. But would people watch? Hard to say. These days we seem to be less interested in gathering knowledge and more intent on telling others what we know. So what else did happen this year? The term Taylor Swift economy was coined. Time magazine's Person of the Year for 2023, Taylor Swift. She not only brings tens and tens of millions of dollars in business to any city she plays in, but she's credited with uplifting the National Football League simply by dating the Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. Taylor Swift attends games, and ticket prices go up. TV ratings go way up. It's crazy. However, back on January 2nd of 2023, we were watching Monday Night Football just for the football. The NFL, Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin suffered a cardiac arrest after a relatively light hit at the end of a play. His life saved only by the quick response from on-field medical teams. The game was canceled. Hamlin went to hospital in critical condition. He is 25 years old and even returned to professional football. In late July, the 19-year-old son of basketball superstar LeBron James collapsed also of cardiac arrest during the college hoops game. He has since recovered and returned to the game. While I'm on sports, the GOAT, greatest of all time, soccer superstar Christine Sinclair played her last game for Team Canada this year. She played for Canada in 331 games over 23 years. She has more international goals than any other soccer player in the world. At age 40, she still continues to play professionally for the Portland Thorns, although I suspect that will end soon as well, her choice. The well-deserved tributes just poured in, and I hope we see Christine Sinclair as part of Canadian women's soccer and sports in years to come. Taylor and Travis were the big love story, but not a great relationship year for Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He and his wife of 18 years, Sophie Gregoire, announced August 2nd that they would be separating. I'm kind of surprised that after that, the story just kind of went away. Infidelity rumors were attached to the both of them. Personally, I kind of believe some of those rumors, but I won't muckrake here. Don't get me wrong, I think it's good that we give people their own space and privacy, but usually in society, we don't do that. We are much nosier than that. We want the dirt. Also this year, Trudeau appointed former GG David Johnston to lead an inquiry into Chinese interference in our elections. We learned the word rapporteur. A rapporteur, which, by the way, means reporter. We couldn't have just a reporter. We needed a rapporteur. Johnston had to step down after accusations of favoritism and said in his resignation letter he had become too muddled in political controversy to be effective. In September, Trudeau accused the Indian government of involvement in the murder of a Canadian Sikh leader that was living in Canada. That's a far cry from 2018, when Justin dressed to himself and his family in complete extravagant Bollywood-style garb while in India to show his affiliation with the people who, by the way, laughed behind his back, sometimes in front of his front. Denials of the involvement in the assassination were issued. Canada-India relations were strained. We exchanged diplomatic censures, passport limitations, until the U.S. made similar accusations about American Sikhs. Now the Canadian accusations are being taken a little more seriously, and investigations are promised. I don't want to give too much air to American politics, although history was made when Congress ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Never been done in over 200 years. You're out. It was actually tougher for them to oust pants-on-fire George Santos. U.S. Congress is dysfunctional. It's the least effective Congress ever. Political oxygen is sucked up by Donald Trump, with whom everything seems unprecedented.
It's a collusion hoax. It's a collusion witch hunt.
Let's just leave it at that. Well, I will say that a few times this year, the skies over Washington, as well as New York, Chicago, Detroit, and others, were an eerie, dull, hazy orange, thanks to the record number of wildfires burning in Canada. The stench of American politics drifts up to us, and our wildfire smoke downwind to them. Which one is worse? Which one chokes more people? Yeah, another year of fires and floods. At this year's COP conference, the final resolution agreed that we must begin to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. By the way, COP stands for Conference of Parties. The C does not stand for climate or for change. In 2022, the conference was held in Egypt. This year in Dubai. I guess they want to keep it as close to oil country as possible. In Canada, our feds have said that all cars and light vehicle sales in this country must be electric by 2035. We'll see. What else happened in 2023? Well, we had both an actors and a writers strike in America, shutting down Hollywood and movies, TV, and new productions by countless streaming services. Much of the concern surrounded the ability of artificial intelligence to replace actors and writers, and that especially came to the fore after ChatGPT was introduced near the end of 2022. Despite that, two of the biggest movies in the history of cinema came out this year, both to critical acclaim. Barbie and Oppenheimer, same weekend. Seeing both was known as the Barbenheimer experience. If you preferred curling up with a book, your choice in 2023 may have been the Prince Harry memoir, Spare. That came out in June. But a month before that, Harry had attended his father's official coronation. Without the wife and kids, just Harry. In May, it was formalized. King Charles.
The coronation oath has stood for centuries and is enshrined in law. Are you willing to take the oath?
I am willing.
Canada has introduced King Charles coins in early December. First coins without Elizabeth in 70 years. They're now allegedly in circulation. I say allegedly because who sees coins anymore? Even street people take debit. King Charles the Monarch is not to be confused with King Charles, the weekly CNN show that debuted this year. That's right, CNN has a show called King Charles. It's hosted by Gayle King and Charles Barkley. I don't know. Charles Barkley is also the main voiceover spokesperson for the Subway sandwich chain, and they run those ads on CNN, often back-to-back with the promo ads for the King Charles show. I find that unsettling. I'm not used to CNN hosts trying to sell me sandwiches. How do I trust your talk show opinions when only seconds ago you insisted that I try the chicken teriyaki? Also in June of this year, we lost contact with a submersible called the Titan. It was on its way to the Titanic wreckage. Search and rescue teams said they heard beeps and signals, so we held out hope. Turns out it likely imploded minutes into its deep-sea journey, killing all 5 on board. In 2023, Turkey saw devastating earthquakes, and the recently re-elected President Erdogan government was accused of questionable construction and renovation permits that compromised the stability of many of the buildings, leading to even greater human tragedy. For a while this year, we thought we might lose Iceland. They had like 10,000 earthquakes in under a week, all leading to an anticipated volcanic eruption that is still going on. Iceland, it's under 400,000 people. It's about the same geographical size as Cuba, if that helps. 1,000 football fields? Well, it's about that big. But they do know how to handle volcanoes. Otherwise, so far so good for Iceland. Well, those are the highlights as I see them from 2023. It's difficult to cover all 365 days in just a few minutes, but a good overview, I hope. I like to finish the year in review by acknowledging those who we have lost in the past 12 months. This is not a morbid thing. This is to at least briefly acknowledge and honor their existence. Usually I first start with the nonagenarians, those who had made it to at least 90. But this year we have to start with January of 2023 and Hazel McCallion, Canada's longest-serving mayor of Mississauga. She was 92 when she retired. She passed in 2023 at 101. Actor Al Jaffe passed in April. He was 102. Near the beginning of December, TV legend Norman Lear passed at age 101. Henry Kissinger was 100. You know that they say the first person that will live to be 150 has already been born? We have the science. Bob Barker joined the Betty White Club, just shy of a century. He passed this year at age 99. Those we lost that were 90 and older, actress Gina Lola Brigida was 95, as was Hall of Fame CFL and NFL coach Bud Grant. Singers Harry Belafonte and Tony Bennett were 96. Composer Burt Bacharach was 94. Actor George Maharis was 94. Actor Barry Newman was 92. Comedian Pat Cooper, 93. Actress Piper Laurie, 91. Canadian legend actor Gordon Pinsent passed at age 92. Later, in the beginning of May, we lost Gordon Lightfoot. He was 84. But after that, a picture began circulating. It was a real photo taken backstage at Massey Hall in Toronto, posing, standing together, Gordon Lightfoot, Gord Downey, and Gordon Pinsent. Known mostly for TV roles, actors Inga Swenson and David McCallum passed in 2023. Each at age 90. Remember Talking Sex with Sue? We lost Sue Johansson. She was 93. As was first female U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor and religious nut Pat Robertson. Political trailblazer Dianne Feinstein was 90. Rosalind Carter was 96. Others passing in 2023, TV personality and former Ontario Lieutenant Governor David Onley. Guitar hero Jeff Beck. Also in January, David Crosby, Lisa Marie Presley, and Fred White of Earth, Wind, and Fire. In January, we lost Robbie Knievel and Robbie Bachman. Tim Bachman would pass at the end of April. Continuing with January, Adam Rich, who's a child star of 8 is Enough. He passed at age 54. Lisa Loring, the original Wednesday on the Addams Family TV show, had a stroke and passed at age 64. At the end of January, we lost Cindy Williams and Bobby Hull. Also, Melinda Dillon. This is always a personal favorite of mine. She was most famous playing the mom in Christmas Story, warning about that BB gun. She was also the mom in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. She was the one that climbed the mountain with Richard Dreyfuss at the end of that movie. Melinda Dillon. February saw the passing of Richard Belzer and Raquel Welch. TV's Beretta Robert Blake was 89. We also lost troubled actor Tom Sizemore and Fiddler on the Roof actor Topol. In 1968, the Olympics in Mexico City became famous for the Black Power Black Glove Salute. But also that year, a very controversial high jumping technique was introduced. Officials even wondered if it was legal. Since then, it has become the method of high jumping. It's called the Fosbury Flop. We lost Rick Fosbury this year at age 76. On Seinfeld, one of Kramer's favorite all-time ball players was Joe Pepitone. Joe Pepitone passed in the spring. In October, baseballer Tim Wakefield died. Jerry Springer passed near the end of April. So did actor Michael Lerner. Also, actor Barry Humphries, best known for playing the character Dame Edna. And then a few days after that, as I already mentioned, Gordon Lightfoot. Shortly after that, football superstar Jim Brown passed away. CFL, NFL quarterback Joe Kapp also passed. And in October, gridiron great Dick Butkus. The most notable loss in May, Tina Turner. Over the summer of 2023, we lost controversial Italian politician Silvio Berlusconi, actors Treat Williams, Glenda Jackson, and one of my favorites, Alan Arkin. Gone suddenly were Sinead O'Connor, Pee Wee Herman, of course that's actor Paul Rubens, Randy Meisner, founding member of the Eagles, Hollywood director William Friedkin, he did The Exorcist and The French Connection, among many more, and NHL great Bobby Baun. After that, suddenly Robbie Robertson, Jimmy Buffett, Jerry Moss, who was the M to Herb Alpert's A in A&M Records. In autumn, we lost singers The Dream Weaver, Gary Wright, and Roger Whittaker, Rocky's Burt Young, Night Court's Richard Mall, Richard Roundtree, the original Shaft, college basketball infamous coach Bobby Knight, and of course Suzanne Summers, then Matthew Perry. As winter came, Shane MacGowan left us, singer with the Pogues. Also Canadian musicians Chad Allen. Chad Allen and the Expressions were the Guess Who precursor. And Miles Goodman of April Wine. Then Denny Lane, who was a founding member of both the Moody Blues and Wings with Paul McCartney. Oddly, or maybe not, one of the least covered celebrity passings of the year was at the beginning of December. Actor Ryan O'Neal. This podcast recorded just before Christmas, so it would not include anybody who's passed since then. That is my list. If I've left out one of your favorite celebrities who passed in 2023, my apologies, it was inadvertent. By the way, I still keep my list of famous people who are 90 and older. You'd be amazed how many there are. I should do a podcast on just that one day. Congratulations to Willie Nelson and Carol Burnett, who turned 90 this past year, among a few others. Turning 90 in 2024. And by the way, I don't believe I have the ability to curse them just by mentioning their names. If I could cause someone's demise by simply mentioning their name in a podcast, believe me, there'd be other people I would mention. Anyway, turning 90 this year, just a few highlights. Jean Chrétien, Don Cherry, Tina Louise. She was Ginger in Gilligan's Island. Jamie Farr was Klinger on MASH. Sophia Loren, Bridget Bardot, Frankie Valli, Pat Boone. Their 90th birthdays are looming. Before I go, I'd like to repeat a sentiment from last year's podcast. Yes, as we review the year, it seems like crazy times and there's a lot of problems on Earth, but it's still the best damn planet I've ever lived on. From me and everyone who works on this podcast. Okay, it's just me. Merry everything and happy always.
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup of kindness yet.